Teacher Gamer Revolution. What we're talking about is wild mind training. What? Wild what? Wild mind training. Wild what? I'm talking wild mind training. Wild mind training. Wild mind training. You know what?
Welcome to Season 3 of the Teacher Gamer Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Resnicek, and I'm thrilled to be sharing upcoming interviews with some of the most dedicated adventurers, educators, and artists on the planet. I am so excited to present to you part 2 of my interview with Michael Franti. If you would like to watch the video of the interview produced by Joe Klimke, please become a founding member of the Substack for Teacher Gamer at Zachary Resnicek at Substack. Enjoy.
And as you go out in the world and you've traveled extensively and you've played all over the place, how do you feel like the direct engagement with the audience becomes a playful experience?
Well, people say to me a lot, it looks like the audience is just like, super focused on what you're doing, and they're just throwing their hands up in the air. And how do you make this, how do you achieve that? And the answer is that I ask them to, or I'll just say, throw your hands in the air, and people will do it, And there's something that's liberating about singing and about throwing your hands in the air. I actually wrote a song called Hands Up to the Sky, which is going to be our next single on this new record. And it's about how the act of putting your hands up is like this release of letting go. People do it when they cheer at a baseball game. People do it when they testify in church. People do it when they're arrested. What do you say? You say put your hands up so that you're in a position of vulnerability. And there is a power in that when you're able to do that for yourself, to throw your hands up, be in that position of vulnerability, to sing out loud, to dance, to move your body freely. That is an act of grieving. It can be an act of forgiving. It can be an act of celebrating. It can be an act of so many ways of letting go.
I heard that people who were born blind, when they succeed at something, they actually put their hands in the air, having never ever seen anybody else do it.
Amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
So to go to that. Yeah, I mean, your performances are super high energy, and there's a lot of infectious joy. I've been to a number of your shows over the years, and can you remember like a particular memorable moment where it just went to the next level?
Well, there's so many. I mean, it happens at every show. There's always moments of release. Carl and I talk about it a lot, about how our favorite part of playing a concert is when you first walk into the venue, and maybe I'll go out and I'll watch the support act performing for a little while, and I'll see the crowd, and I'll see people who are kind of just carrying whatever weight that they've had of their week or months or even a year of waiting for this night to come out to see a show. And not just my show, but any show. And then the music hits, and you see their shoulders just drop, and you see smiles come to their face, and you'll see tears come down their eyes. You'll see people high-fiving strangers or hugging a friend that they haven't actually hugged in months or years. And it's that feeling of togetherness that is really why I do it. And we built a music venue here, and we called it the Togetherness Lounge because that's what we wanted. We wanted to create that feeling of shared emotion and dialogue, and there's just something really powerful about people sharing in the same expression of emotion in the same place at the same time.
Your album Stay Human, it's really got high vibe energy.
Yeah.
But I also know that you have this serious side and this background, and especially with your previous political and activist side. How do you balance that serious side and the playful side?
Well, I feel like in order to be anything to be sustainable, you have to have play in it, and there has to be moments of dance and appreciation of the steps that you're taking, because everything along the way is difficult, you know. And if you look at if you were to go to a butterfly sitting on a tree and say, "Is this tree alive?" The butterfly say, "You know, I've been here my whole life, all 5 days, and I've never seen the tree move. So I've scientifically concluded without a reasonable doubt that this tree is in fact dead." And then you come back to the tree 5 years later, you see that it beared fruit, and that the fruit had been shared by all the animals in the forest, and that the seeds had been scattered by those animals, and more seedlings had grown up that are going to produce fruit in the years to come, and that the tree is very much alive. And in fact, the entire forest is alive. And when we're talking about activism, a lot of time we're thinking of moving mountains. You know, it's like, if we look at that mountain today, we go, that mountain has never moved. You know, you ask the old man who's lived on the top of the mountain his whole life, he said he never saw it move one time. But if you came back hundreds or thousands of years later, you'd see that the rivers and air and wind and, you know, rain and erosion had caused incredible change, and that mountain is in fact alive. And so for us to keep going in our desire to bring about change in the world, we have to include play in order to make it be something that we still want to engage in. Nice. And when it gets too serious, we tap out. And you know, I built Soulshine. Our motto here is to inspire change in people so that they may inspire change in others. And that's why we built this place. And change is something different for everybody. You know, for one person, it's like, oh man, I got to quit this job I hate, and I really want to start my own company. Another person's like, been living with their mother and watching them, you know, their body slow down and their mind go through Alzheimer's. And another person is like, I really want to lose 4 pounds and fit in my jeans again, or whatever. For everybody, change is a different thing. And rather than tell people what change that I feel that they need, or that I feel necessarily that the world needs, I want to inspire people to make the changes that they want to see in their life. And I think that's where I'm different today in my activism. Like, I definitely have very strong opinions about the world and about politics and the way things are at. And I also leave space that there are people who might feel differently than me, that still have things in their life that they want to change for the betterment of themselves and others. And it's not up for me to decide what those things are, as long as they're not infringing on the freedoms of other people to make their changes.
Having kids yourself, what do you value in education for them?
I value balance, and for example, I feel Taj at age 5, he's far more educated than I am in language. You know, he speaks three languages fluently, and I haven't. You know, I've taken. I'm 3rd level Spanish 1. I've taken Spanish 1 3 times, and I've learned a little bit of Bahasa, enough to have a basic, you know, morning conversation with someone. And so he learned that through the street, through playing with other kids, and not in school. And then in school, he's learning to, you know, the sounds of the letters and how they go together, and basic mathematics. And at home, he's also learning art, and he's learning, you know, music, and watching me do what I do. And so every environment has a different place that you can, or different ways that you can learn. And my views on education in the sort of classic academic sense are that it's really, its windows rapidly closing on that style of education. Because people, especially during the pandemic, learned that I don't have to necessarily be somewhere to learn. I can be anywhere in the world and learn. And universities that have been about creating exclusivity and the whole admissions process and these super high fees to get in, that's going to go away because people are going to be like, why am I paying all this money and going into debt when I can learn the same stuff online or through Zoom or through through sitting with somebody else. And now the way that careers are, we're not just trying to craft a role for somebody to play in a company, and they're going to eventually age out at that same company, and they're going to eventually get their office, corner office and their gold watch and their retirement. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. And so with Taj, I really want him to be somebody who understands how to learn, not someone who's just given a list of facts to memorize. But how do you teach yourself? How do you problem solve? How do you find ways to connect with other people? How do you connect with nature? How do you do it in a way that serves more than just yourself, but serves the community and the planet? So education today is completely different, and I'm excited about it.
Well, I was actually going to ask you, what do you think the future of education looks like?
I think that if I, here would be an analogy. I believe that the future of energy is that everyone becomes their own energy plant. That everyone has, solar on their rooftops. Everyone has a car or a vehicle that has solar built into it. That every phone, you turn it over, on the back of it, there's a solar panel there. You never ever plug it in. You just sit it out in the sun and it does this thing. And that the energy companies become organizers of that energy in the same way that happened in the music industry, where it went from everyone having their own collection of CDs to then everything being online, and people can tap into it as they need to, or as they want to. And that there will be more energy that's created than is actually needed, and that the energy companies will just be that Napster service, like, I need some energy today and I'm going to get it, but it came from somewhere else. And I feel like education is the same way, that people will need to and want to self-educate, and that it'll still involve schools and can still involve places where people socialize and learn in that way. But as people get out of the younger ages of school, that everyone is going to need to figure out their own skills and their own way of doing things. And I think that a really strong way of doing that is through mentorship. And it used to be that, an elder was like this. Our friend Chip Connolly talks about this a lot. He says, an elder used to be somebody that you go to who's like this old man with a gray beard who's been farming for his whole life. And he'd say, hey, when do I put my corn in? He'd say, well, there's a late frost this year, so put your corn in May. Don't put it in late April. And now you just go to Google and you go, when do I put my corn in the ground? And it tells you, like a million things will come up for that. And just because you have all this information at your fingertips doesn't mean that you know which of those things is most important or most imminent for you. And that's where a mentor comes in. A mentor can say, well, here's all these things that you want to do, and here's all the ways that you can get there. Now, which of those things do you need to do first in order to get to second, third, fourth step, and fifth step to get to where you eventually want to go.
Like guide you.
Guide you, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's often the hardest thing in anything that we do. You know, like for example, in building this hotel, I started with 5 rooms, and I was like, well, I want it to be a yoga studio, or want it to be a yoga place where people can practice yoga and hit the reset button. So where should we put the yoga studio? And I was like, well, if I put it on the top of the building, or I put it on the bottom of the building, then everybody can come in easily, and the rooms can be on top, and it'll be easier to get to the yoga studio. But if I put it on the top of the building, it'll feel more important, and people will have a better view, and they'll be our hearts and spirits will be more open that way. So I put it on the top, you know. So those are the kinds of things that, like, in your life that you have to think of, like, in what is the most imminent step to get me to where I'm going next. And otherwise you can try and try and try and try and try, but you can learn in 5 minutes what took someone else 50 years to master.
So how important is it for games and play to be part of education?
Well, I think games and play need to be part of everything. And that's why when we built this yoga studio, the new yoga studio we had, I was like, how do you get out of the yoga studio? What would be the best thing? The best thing would be to jump in the water. You're so hot and sweaty, just jump right into the pool. And I was like, but wouldn't it be a lot cooler if there was a water slide into the pool after your yoga class? That would be much more fun and much more playful. And so that's what we did. So I believe in the power of play to open your mind to new ideas. I also believe in the power of stillness to do the same thing. And in playfulness, we create like this freedom and this attitude of like, I'm going to try any movement. Any movement is okay. There's anything I try, there's nothing that's off limits. And in stillness, we create the desire for our mind to find things to play with. Mm. And when we're never still, our mind is constantly being inundated with things or attacked with things. So we don't ever think beyond them. And when our mind never has play, we have all these ideas that we've been thinking of, but we never act on them, and we never manifest them. And so I feel like it's important to have both. That play and boredom are the yin and yang.
I say the boredom, like when the kids are like, I'm so bored. You're like, oh man, I wish I had that time.
Yeah.
You know, like just to be still and be like, and because they always, unless you give them a device, they sit there bored, and then something comes.
And they find something. They start playing with their hair, or they see something on the ground, and they find a leaf. Pretty soon the leaf is a boat, and the boat's going down a river, and now the leaf's a surfer, and the leaf's, you know, like, and that's how when as adults we also need that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why it's important for us to find not necessarily like blank sheet of paper meditation, but to take moments in our day when we go for a scooter ride, and you're just on the bike and you're just going, and your mind is clearing itself, or you take a walk in nature, or you get on your yoga mat, or you go for a run, or you go and sit down by the beach and just zone out, you know. But those moments of stillness and zoning out, you know, it's the times, you know, there's that old adage of like you can't see your reflection in boiling water, but as soon as the water becomes still, everything becomes clear. And especially as creatives and entrepreneurs, artists, and everyone is that. Everyone is a creative and everyone is an artist. You have to have that stillness to be able to generate freshness.
From our conversation, starting with hopscotch, I actually didn't get to ask you about wood carving. Did you do some wood carving? Is that a thing in your life?
You know, I don't actually carve wood, but if you look around social, there's wood carving everywhere, and it's kind of an homage to my dad because he taught me this appreciation of it, and it's one of the things that I've experienced in Bali over the 16, 17 years since I've been coming here, and we've been in business here for 13 years now. is it is a land of creative geniuses, and there's in every aspect of what they do. Like, for example, this morning I was doing yoga and I was watching out here in this rice field of how they bring the ducks out, these working ducks who go and they live in this little patch of the rice field, and they let them out in the morning and they go out and they walk around, and then they come back to they eat the pests in the field and they fertilize it with their poop, and then they come back and to their little roost there. But if you go down to the roost, there's an offering there, and there's a small temple for their experience, and in that offering there's this incredible artistry of weaving, and of even in the most simple agrarian life of ducks and poop, it's like there's this artistry that is found there that is so amazing to me. And that when I see that in the carving, I'm like, man, we have some of the most incredible artists in the world. Like, let's not just put a door on our hotel. Let's let someone carve it, and it becomes a piece of art. And I see, and just like anywhere in the world, how our screen culture has come into Bali now, and a lot of the young people are not doing the arts that their fathers and grandfathers and grandparents and grandmother and all of their ancestors had done this art for generations.
They're splitting their time.
And now they're on the phone, or they're going into the tourist economy, which are, I think it's great, and I want families to and young people to experience whatever they want to choose in life. You shouldn't just have to be a carver. But it does give me a deep appreciation for those artisans, and wanting to preserve it in some way, and also support it financially through any way that I can. And so I love the artistry of Bali, and I learn from watching, not necessarily doing the carving, but just the creative process of watching the carving happen, because most of what we have here at Soulshine has been done, like actually right here, like these posts that were carved for the DJ table were done right there. You have to sit and watch it.
And so that idea, even as you were saying from the beginning, of just getting a box of Legos, and then in the same thing of just banging against industrial metal, and that leading poetry, and that leading into being a father, and the wildness and physicality of being with kids, and the punk ethos that you said is to be yourself, and then watching the process of you two and this larger experience, and then connecting with values, and that moving you into what it's like to think about how problems can be solved, being playful, spending time with inmates, and especially youth that are struggling to find their voice, and then talking about how energy can be something that's your own and that you can generate from yourself. As again, I'm kind of interpreting what you were saying about eventually self-education, mentorship. My last question for you is, as a teacher and community builder yourself, what would you say are 10 or around 10 skills you think a teacher must have in their toolkit in this new era?
I think the number one attribute for any person in any field is to be a skilled listener. And it's impossible to, especially as a teacher, and I grew up with 2 teachers, you can't do it the same way for every kid. And there's some kids that can really need to be pushed and come on, you can do this, stay with this, we got this, let's go. And there's some kids that really need to be left on their own to do their own thing. And they're some kids learn through reading. I have friends who, when they get a new piece of musical gear, they'll read every note or every word of the pamphlet that describes how to use it. And I'm just like, I have no idea. I don't even know. I can't put that together at all when I'm reading it. But if I just touch it and turn it on and start posting some buttons and go, oh, this does that, and then if there's somewhere I get stuck, then I'll look and try to figure it out. Or better yet, call somebody who knows and then ask them. And I learn better that way. And everyone is different in their learning. And so to be able to listen is super important, to be able to be malleable and flexible in that way that you understand, to be able to be empathetic, to put yourselves in the shoes of any of the people that you're teaching. I think to maybe even higher up, but definitely one is to be a lifelong learner. Mm-hmm. As a teacher, you have to be a lifelong learner, and in order to do that, another word would be curiosity. Curiosity is the elixir of life. It's the thing that keeps us young. We all know somebody who's 38 years old who seems like they're 90 because they're just doing the same stuff and they never seek anything out. And we all know someone hopefully we should know people who are 80 who seem like they're 30, not because they can still run and jump and do all this stuff, but because they're constantly finding new things, and they're hearing about something that's taking place in the library, and they get in the bus and they drive down to the library or go to the Asian Art Museum because there's a new display up, because they're constantly wanting to find something new. I think that another thing would be just a desire to give. That was the thing that I saw with both my parents growing up, was they didn't leave their, it was impossible for them to leave their work in the classroom. You know, my mom at home, it was like a big deal. Like if we ever threw away a roll of toilet paper after it was the actual roll that was left, you know, it's like, don't throw those away. Those are things that I use in my class, you know, that was like, and she was constantly just trying to find ways to engage with her kids. It's
like resourcefulness.
Resourcefulness, yeah. And then, you know, the main subject we've been talking about of playfulness is huge. You know, being able to have fun, make the experience of learning be magical. I think that's another word. It would be magic, because creativity. It's like I'm about to go get on a call with somebody in a few minutes, and we're having a songwriting session over Zoom, and so we don't know what we're going to write about. We don't know. You know, we haven't talked to each other today. Haven't talked to each other in a few months, and we're going to get on a Zoom call, and by the end of it, we're going to have a song that is going to be in the world somewhere in some way that wasn't there before. And through the words and melody and vibration and chords and rhythm, it's going to evoke an emotion in ourselves and hopefully in somebody else that they never knew existed. And that's the magic. That's like the alchemy. And as a teacher, you have to be an alchemist, because everyone in your class comes in with this different set of circumstances before they got there, which some kids didn't have breakfast, some kids, dad has been in prison or mom has been in prison, some kids woke up with a head cold, another kid woke up really excited to go to school and everything's going great, and then all this group of kids come together in this one place, and you have to be able to take all these things that seem like they're difficult or problems, and then you've got to make it into something magical that is greater than the sum of all. And that's when you win. And I've had teachers who did that for me. Now, I think I'll close this by saying that I had this one teacher his name was Father Huerta. He was my English 101 teacher at University of San Francisco. And somehow I managed to get through 12 years of, from kindergarten through high school without ever learning how to write an essay properly. And so on the first day I walk into Father Huerta's class, and I was on playing basketball at the university, and I was just, not super academic minded to begin with. And he says everyone in my class either gets an A or an F, and there's nothing in between. And so I was just, in my mind, I'm like folding up my books. And I'm out the door. I'm like, I never got an A in anything. Like, I'm not gonna, I can't win here. And he goes, what I mean by that is I will not let you hand in anything that's less than an A work, your best work. And you can stay after school with me. You can knock on my door in the middle of a rainy night. I'll meet you at a cafe on the weekend. Like, it doesn't matter. You can call me any time of day, any time of night, and I will sit and work with you on your essay. And so we did, and he taught me how to write a thesis and how to really hone it down and how to create the body of the paragraphs to substantiate what you're saying, and then to come up with an amazing conclusion that draws it all together, and how to use nouns over instead of adjectives, but you use colorful words that are visual things that help you to describe what you're saying. And he turned me on to the beat poets of San Francisco, and I got to meet, Bob Kaufman and Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Ginsberg and all these incredible writers, and he'd take me down to City Light bookstore on the weekends, and he taught me how to write. And that's where the whole idea of the beatniks came from, that of the beat generation of poets. And so I had that experience with them, and that became how I wrote songs. A chorus of a song is just a thesis of an essay, writing, whatever it is, and then you whatever your thesis is, and then you're just creating verses that are the paragraphs that support what you're saying in the thesis. And so years later, I get a call from his twin brother, and he says, Father Huerta is in the hospital, and he's actually in hospice now. He has this really fast form of cancer. And so I go see him, and I said, how you doing? He goes, I'm coming down the last days, and I've been a lot better. But the doctors said to me, it's moved into your testicles now, and but if we cut off your testicles, you could have 6 more weeks to live. And he said, what do I need testicles for? I'm a fucking priest. He cut them off. So he got 6 more weeks to live, which is a description of the playfulness also. So I was sitting there singing some songs to him, and every couple of days I go visit him as he was winding down the last days of his life. And one day, he would sort of be singing along to the words, and when somebody dies, their breath becomes fainter and fainter, and their ability to speak becomes softer and softer. And so in the last couple of days, he was just mouthing the words. He couldn't get any breath out to use his voice. And I said to him, Father Huerta, it's been 20 years since I've seen you. How do you know, all these songs? And he said, look under the bed. So I look under the bed, and I pulled out these big, thick binders, and I opened them up, and he had every CD that I had ever made. And, I was really moved by that. And, but it was a reminder for me of how important it is, mentorship, teaching, and how you can have this incredible effect on the trajectory of someone's life just by helping them to learn something, a new way of thinking about things. And he did that for me, and I would never be, the artist I am today. I wouldn't have this, Soulshine Hotel. I wouldn't be touring around the world if I didn't know how to organize my thoughts into an essay and put them on paper as a song, or as an idea for a business, or anything else, and as an idea for a nonprofit. To be able to organize your thoughts in that way is the greatest skill that I learned, the most valuable skill that I learned from anybody.
Wow.
Thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you, Michael Franti, and congratulations to you, Michael, Sara, and Taj on the birth of Lua Behjat Franti. Welcome to the family, right where you belong. And thank you again to the Soulshine crew for welcoming me, and special shout out to Agung and family who have been working there at Soulshine for a few generations. And thanks to all of you for listening. If you are an educator or a gamer or a teacher gamer, or you just want to up your skills in project-based learning and social emotional learning, or delivering RPGs in education, in schools, in camps, or wherever on the planet you are, please get in touch, and would love to have you join our courses. You can check them out at biophiliceducation.com, or reach out to me, Zach, at teachergamer.com, or check us out on Instagram or LinkedIn. Send me a message, and would love to see you join our class. We hope you've enjoyed the Teacher Gamer podcast, a Wild Mind training production. Text and production copyright 2021 to 2025 by Wild Mind Training for Teacher Gamer Revolution. All rights reserved.